Alright, so we're taking a look here at problem situations, and we want to write some equations from the problem situation and then also use our equations to solve some extra problems here. So first off, let's read the problem. It says a closet organizer charges a $100 initial consultation fee plus $30 per hour. The cost as a function of the number of hours worked is graphed below. Alright, so we see the graph off to the side there. Note that y is a function of x means that y depends on x. Alright, so a couple things that I want to point out here before we get started. If you look, let's see if I can get this on here. If you look at the problem and you see function of, those two words, alright, what comes immediately before that, in this case, the cost, that is your y. And what comes immediately after it, number of hours, is your x. Okay, so the cost is a function of the number of hours, so the cost depends on x is what that's telling us. If you look at the graph, if you look at the y-axis represents total cost. It's because y is cost. And the x-axis represents time in hours because the x is the number of hours. So that's how that's set up there. So the first thing I want to do here is write an equation of this line that represents the problem situation. And in order to do this, I need a slope and I need a y-intercept. Now, since we're given a graph, I can find the y-intercept real quick. The y-intercept's 100. So my b is 100. I also want to find a slope. Now there's a couple of different ways I can find the slope. I can do rise over run, and if I do that, I'm going to rise from this point up to 250 here. So from 100 up to 250, that's 150. And I'm going to run over this way here, and that's 0 to 5, so that's a run of 5. And so over here, when I find a slope, I have 150 rise over 5 the run, and that gives me a slope of 30. I could also have gotten the fact that the slope was 30 because right here in the problem it tells me that. A lot of the times when you see the word per, P-E-R, right before that, that's going to give you the slope because the slope is a rate. $30 per hour, that's our rate. That's our slope then. So I'm going to go ahead and write my equation. The equation of my line here is y equals 30, which is the slope. Always slap the x on behind the slope, and plus 100, which is our y-intercept. Now the second thing I want to do is interpret the meaning of the slope and the y-intercept, and I'm going to use the wording of the problem in order to do that. My slope, which is 30, I'll write this down again, the slope is 30. The slope tells me the cost per hour. It's $30 per hour. It's not the number of hours. The number of hours can change. We substitute the number of hours in there for x. We could, rent this closet organizing person for 10 hours or 2 hours or 30 hours if we wanted to, whatever. But this number 30 right here, the slope, that is the cost per hour. I wrote the cost per hours. Let's see if I can erase that here. Make it hour. There we go. That's better. And the y-intercept, the other piece of information that we want to interpret, is 100. And the y-intercept is the initial fee. And that's usually what your y-intercept is going to be, an initial amount. So if I ask you to interpret what the slope and the y-intercept are, that's what I'm looking for you to do right there. Last thing I want to do is answer a question about, or in a question using the equation that we just wrote. So here's the question. I don't have it written down yet. The question is, find the cost if the organizer, or the closet organizer, works for 12 hours. Oops, works for 12 hours. So that's the problem that I want to answer. So if I go back up here and look at my original problem in my graph, I see that the number of hours is x right here in the problem. I look on my x-axis, and that is hours right there. So that tells me that in my equation, y equals 30x plus 100, I want to substitute in that 12 in for x. So I'm going to do that here. And when I do that, I get y equals 30 times 12 plus 100. 30 times 12 is 360. So y equals 460. Alright, and again, y, if I go back up into my original problem, y is my cost. On the y-axis, tells me that's the total cost. So I would say, in sentence form, I'd say, let's see, find the cost. The cost I have a better way to write this. Let's see here. We'll erase this. We'll say the organizer charges $460 for 12 hours of work. And that's the answer to our question then. Alright, let's write another equation here based on second problem that we're looking at. Let's see, here we go. Alright, so the second problem we're looking at here says that we have a caterer that charges $200 fee plus $18 per person served, and the cost as a function of the number of guests is shown in the graph over here. So I want to write an equation here to represent this situation, and again I need a slope and a y-intercept. Whoops, let's get my pen back. Alright, so my slope is going to be the $18 per person, and my y-intercept is 200. I know that from looking at the problem, and I also know that because right here I can see that the graph, or the line crosses the y-axis at 200. That's obviously 200 for the y-intercept. And if I wanted to get the slope, I could do a rise and a run from 200 up to 550. It's a sloppy line. That's 350, or that's 650. I couldn't even see that there. Alright, so sorry. From 200 up to 650. Oh, that erases my lines too. Is 450, and my run is 25. So if I wanted to get my slope off of my graph, I have 450 over 25, and that would give me 18 as well. So you can get your slope that way as also. Third way you could get your slope is to use the slope formula in 2 points. You have the ordered pair 0, 200 right there that you could use, and up here you have the ordered pair 25 comma 650 that you could use, and you know you could use the slope formula y sub 2 minus y sub 1 x sub 2 minus x sub 1, and you get 650 minus 200 over 25 minus 0, which is 450 over 25, and you get 18, which is what we just said it would be anyway. So there are at least 3 ways that you could figure that out. So we're going to go back over here and write the equation of our line. Let's see here. The equation is going to be y equals slope followed by x, so 18x, and plus 200. Alright. Second thing I want to do is interpret my slope and my y-intercept in terms of the problem. So the slope is 18, and the slope represents the cost per person served. So the slope is the cost per person served. And the y-intercept, which is 200, there's my dog. My y-intercept at 200, that represents the initial cost. So the y-intercept is the initial fee. Alright, last thing I want to do here is answer a question using my equation, and I'll write the question down. The question is, how much would it cost to serve 200 guests? So write that down. Alright, so I'm going to go back up to my graph, and I see that my x-axis is my guess, so I know that I have to plug in the number of guests for x, and I'm going to use my equation here, y equals 18x plus 200. We'll plug in 200 for x, and we'll see what happens. I'll do the math off to the side here. 200 times 18. Get some zeros and a 16. Hold my spot. Some more zeros and a 2. And, whoops, let's erase that. So that gives us 3,600. So we would say to serve 200 guests, the caterer charges $3,600. I think I'm going to be a caterer from now on. Alright, there it is.